Late one stormy night, in a small, forgotten village surrounded by thick woods, there stood an old, decrepit mansion. It had been abandoned for years, but the locals knew better than to go near it. They whispered of a curse, a haunting that had driven the last family to madness and despair. One evening, a curious traveler named Rajat, new to the area and skeptical of the old tales, decided to take shelter in the mansion during a fierce thunderstorm. As he stepped inside, the door creaked ominously behind him, shutting on its own. The air was thick with dust, and the faint smell of decay lingered. Rajat explored the dark, cobweb-filled corridors, the dim light from his flashlight barely cutting through the gloom. The house seemed frozen in time, with old furniture covered in white sheets and mirrors that reflected nothing but darkness. As he moved deeper into the mansion, he noticed something strange, a portrait hanging in the hallway, covered by a black cloth. Curious, he pulled the cloth away to reveal a painting of a family, a mother, father, and their young daughter. But there was something wrong. The eyes of the people in the portrait seemed to follow Rajat as he moved. He shook off the uneasy feeling and continued his exploration, but a low whisper started to echo through the halls. At first, it was faint, barely audible over the sound of the storm, but it grew louder, more insistent. "Leave, leave, leave." Rajat's heart pounded in his chest, but he convinced himself it was just the wind. He tried to open the front door to leave, but it wouldn't budge. Panic set in as the whispers grew louder, filling his ears until they were all he could hear. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and the temperature dropped. Rajat could see his breath in the air as a chill ran down his spine. The whispers turned into a cacophony of voices, each one more desperate than the last. He turned to see shadows moving in the corners of the room, shapes that seemed to shift and twist in impossible ways. Terrified, Rajat ran up the staircase, searching for another way out. But the mansion was a maze, and every door he opened led him deeper into its twisted depths. He finally stumbled upon a small, locked room at the end of a narrow hallway. Desperate, he broke the door down and found himself in what appeared to be a child's bedroom. In the center of the room stood a small, dusty crypt. The whispers stopped, and an eerie silence fell over the house. Rajat slowly approached the crypt, his flashlight trembling in his hand. As he peered inside, he saw a doll, old and worn, with a cracked porcelain face. Its eyes were wide open, staring directly at him. Without warning, the door to the room slammed shut behind him, trapping him inside. The doll's eyes seemed to glow in the darkness, and a cold, malevolent presence filled the room. Rajat backed away in terror as the doll slowly began to move, its head turning to face him. A cold, icy hand touched Rajat's shoulder. He spun around, but there was nothing there. The whispers returned, now deafening, and the doll began to speak in a voice that was not its own. "You're mine now," it said, as the room plunged into darkness. The next morning, the storm had passed, and the mansion stood silent once more. The locals noticed that the traveler who had arrived the previous night was nowhere to be found. They dared not enter the mansion to search for him, knowing that it had claimed yet another soul. Years later, another curious traveler would come across the mansion and find a new portrait hanging in the hallway, this time, of a man with a familiar face, standing beside the family.